Welcome, one and all. My name is Jason Davis. This is Empower Volusia Common Sense, and we're coming to you from an iron bunker hidden in an undisclosed location in the western highlands of Volusia County, Florida, and we're guarded by 2 rabid Pomeranians and 1 crazy cat. That's right. And you can hear us on iTunes, on iPad, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on iCloud, we're everywhere you want to be. Even if you don't want to be there, we're there already. Ha, 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 ha. And you can drop me a line at jasondavispodcast@gmail.com and tell me something you want to hear about or want me to talk about, and we'll go ahead and discuss that matter. I'll do the research, and we'll know all the facts. And that's what we give you, the truth, the facts. So, anyways, let's just get right into this today here. And welcome to another exciting episode of the continuing saga of As the Stomach Turns. Last night at 9 p.m., the Department of Justice declared that their investigation into the Russian collusion and interference into the 2016 election has now gone into a criminal investigation. That's right. And the talking heads there last night, they were just having a good old time. It was shortly before 9 o'clock last night. And the talking heads on television, they were, well, just enjoying life. And but what does all this mean? Well, having been in law enforcement for 6 years or so, in the military police corps, actually, and by the way, don't ever down talk them, because we go through a year's worth of training 7 days a week. Hard, very intense training to be a cop. And so I know how the process goes for investigations, because that's what we're trained to do. Whenever there is a crime, there must be, of course, an investigation. That's the starting point for all criminal adjudications. During this investigation, you interview witnesses and go to scenes and collect data, and you basically go where the evidence leads you. And this is, folks, this is truly the only way you will get to the truth of what actually has happened anywhere.
You can't handle the truth!
Well, so I'm sure most of you watch some of these crime dramas out there in the evening, NCIS and all that. They, and that's what they do. They go back and forth to reevaluate evidence. They go to coroner's offices. They do all this. This is called the investigative process. And if you do not do a thorough investigation into any matter whatsoever, the wrong person can be accused, and that has happened recently. In the investigations that I was involved in the military, a lot of times the first person accused was not generally the right person or the perpetrator. The evidence may have pointed to Joe about committing an assault, but when we looked into the crime itself, it was Bill that did the assault. Joe may have just been at the wrong place at the wrong time. And we usually get him to be the witness to the crime. So there you go with that. So what's been going on here, Mr. Barr? He's been doing it for the past several months. He's been investigating the crime and collusion and interference in the 2016 elections. And guess what? Now somebody might go to jail.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Yep, they went to Italy, they've been to England, they've gone to Russia, they've been to the Ukraine, they've gone everywhere, and even here in the United States. And now, part of the process, once you've collected all that data like they did, now they sit down and evaluate what they have. And then you follow the evidence to where it leads you. And this is where these individuals or individual has broken the law. Is not only after you've done your investigation and reevaluate the evidence, but then the Attorney General now can then begin to file charges. This is where it gets interesting. Lower level crimes such as assault, battery, fraud, minor fraud, and some felonies, the Attorney General could just file charges and have that individual arrested and held for a hearing for a judge. And the hearing will give them bond, release them on their own recognizance or not, or withhold their bond. That might be part of the thing. But when it comes to the issue of high crimes such as treason, murder, things of that nature, then the Attorney General will have to convene what is called a grand jury. And a grand jury is a group of citizens who are called upon by the Attorney General, and they sit and they listen just to the evidence that the Attorney General is going to present. In this particular instance, the Attorney General will show them documentation, data from hard drive servers, telephone calls, text messages, letters back and forth between individuals, and even witnesses can be called. Yeah. And it is his job to have an indictment approved for the arrest and prosecution of the individual or individuals involved in this particular situation that he's making criminal allegations against. There are also certain rules involved about sitting on a grand jury. One of the rules is that grand jury cannot be questioned. They are held in confidence as to who sat on that jury to hear this evidence. You can't get their names. And they're not, also grand jurists are not supposed to talk about any of the cases that they've heard. Individuals that do these things, or even state that they were a grand juror assigned to a particular case, they can be charged with a crime. Yeah, they can be charged with a crime, and it can get a little bit interesting here, really.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
So once the grand jury has been convened and they've rendered their verdict, and let's just say they agree that there was a crime that needs to be charged, which I don't see how they couldn't, because he's been doing this for a while. The question is, who can be charged with this crime now? Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this whole situation. Can Hillary Clinton be charged with a crime? Could Joe Biden be charged with a crime? Because both those people kind of did some evil things, destroying emails, threatening a government, that kind of stuff. Could Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, anybody in Congress be charged with a crime? Can the President of the United States be charged with a crime? Yes. They can be held accountable for their crimes. All of them.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Every single one of them. In the immortal words of President Theodore Roosevelt, no man is above the law, and no man is below it. Nor do we ask any man's permission when we require him to obey it. Obedience to the law is demanded as a right, not asked as a favor. And just to make a point on that one, that is... there is no such thing as no man is above the law in the Constitution. Untrue to what some liberals would like you to know or want you to think. But the prosecution of said crimes are different for elected officials and individuals. Like I said, anybody can be charged with a crime, but it's the prosecution is different. If you're going to charge, let's say, Joe Biden with corruption, by the way, there's no such law called quid pro quo. It's just a legal term that means I'll do something for you, you do something for me. All right, that's all that is. The next steps would be that the Federal Bureau of oh my goodness, yes. And the next step would be that the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations, would then seek out and obtain an arrest warrant, generally handed by the judge during the grand jury, and they would go find Joe Biden, arrest him, and take him to a federal jail where he would then be heard in front of a federal court whether or not he gets bonded out. What? What did I say? But isn't Joe Biden running for president of the United States? Yeah, he is. But as of this moment in time, this point in the history of this great United States, Joe Biden is a private citizen. He can be arrested at any time for breaking the law. It doesn't matter what law he's breaking. He can be a DUI, be spouse abuse, robbing a bank, or anything that's a crime that he may commit. He can be arrested for.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Yes, and if they levy a corruption charge against him under Federal Statute 18 U.S.C. 3282, individuals are protected from prosecution for any non-capital offense in which an indictment is not found within 5 years of the criminal act. In other words, if he did this Ukraine thing 6 years ago, they can't charge him. But guess what? He did it. He visited Ukraine in 2016 and made the now famous withholding of $1.6 billion unless they fired a prosecutor. Oh, that's called coercion. That was 3 years ago, and he could still be charged with the crime of corruption. And by the way, because he implicated his boss, Barack Hussein Obama, he can also be arrested as a co-conspirator. Nobody thought about that one. And if they found Miss Hillary Clinton had broken the law by destroying all those emails, which she did, she admitted to it, and destroying her cell phones and burning SIM cards and such, they could still charge her with the Espionage Act because it's still less than 5 years ago. Oh. Certain crimes do not have a statute of limitations. Just for example, I'm just giving you basic information. Murder, genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression. No statute of limitations on any of those. That's just pointing out little simple facts for your brain. Now, let's say that President Donald J. Trump was found to have possibly committed some sort of crime. Here's the big difference. Here's the big difference. That evidence has to be turned over to the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives, which should be the only committee in the House of Representatives that can write articles of impeachment. They have been, in the history of this country, the only ones that could do it. But now Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi have kind of changing the rules on the fly. And when the impeachment process begins by the Judiciary Committee, they write articles. And once they're written, the whole House has to be present for the vote. And notice the word whole House votes on these articles of impeachment. They have to come to the floor. Now, then it would go to the Senate for impeachment trial. For you see, an interesting fact brought up yesterday, here's something else. See, it has to go to the House to make the charges, like a grand jury. Then it goes to the Senate for the trial, like the court. There's the distinction. You can file articles of impeachment, but until the court is, until it gets over to the Senate, there is nothing done. They're just charges. And they could linger. If somebody really wanted to fight it, they could possibly linger for a while. That's interesting. But here's an interesting fact that was brought up yesterday by Mr. Rush Limbaugh. Senators cannot be out campaigning while there's an impeachment trial going on. So if they file articles of impeachment and then they say, okay, they pass it to the Senate, at that moment, the senators have to come back. They can't be out campaigning to be president anymore, not until this impeachment's over with. That's a Senate rule. And an impeachment trial would consume every senator's schedule. And under the Senate's current rules, all senators must be in session Monday through Saturday, starting around noon each day. So in other words, you have to be home at the office in the chambers of the Senate by noon. They'll be called to order, and they will begin the trial again for that day. That's interesting. That could be a major problem for the 6 senators running to be the Democratic nominee for president: Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, Michael Bennet. That could be a problem. It sounds to me personally, and this is my own personal input, sounds to me like someone's trying to hand a nomination over to Sleepy Joe by pretty much removing all the competition, except maybe now Hillary has a chance to get in there, and she'll wipe the floor with him. Just like any other trial, the Senate would listen to the evidence in open chambers, review witnesses, ask them questions, look at crime scene information, etc., until they come to a conclusion of to impeach or not, guilty or not guilty. They are the jury, the court, and any type of impeachment action for any type. Let's say Nancy Pelosi now. Let's just get off the president. Let's go over to the Speaker of the House. Let's say that Nancy Pelosi gets whipped up in these charges at AG Barr. It might possibly happen that and she gets charged with a crime in this investigation. Would she have to go through impeachment? No. Impeachment is reserved for the House against the president only. That's right. She would be arrested. She would then have to go before a federal judge, and she would go to court in a trial. It would actually be more like a three-ring circus with all the craziness that they do over there. Not a courtroom. For you see, our elected officials are also not above the law. And this has actually been done a couple of times. One was for sending pornography to a minor, Anthony Weiner. And recently, we just had a congressman was charged and found guilty of insider trading. Of course, the jail time is a recommendation, so he's going to jail. But that's a recommendation from the trial, and that how all that works in court. Last evening, also, the breaking news, the FISA reports would be released within the next week or so, and we've been waiting for those for, 3-4 years now? So I don't know if that's going to actually happen anytime in the very near future. Everybody's been promising that. We would really need to know. All this all stems from November 26th, the day after Donald Trump was elected for President of the United States of America. The Democrats are still mad. And that's when the Russian dossier was turned loose on the American people, and everybody knew it. Actually, it was given to our mainstream media. And the FISA warrants were then recognized as being used to spy on American citizens illegally. Yes, illegally. And I'm sure you heard enough of this garbage to really kind of start making your eyes glaze over a little bit. Mine do. So they have, folks, the investigative process, the process of jurisprudence. And in these early hours of this morning, it had been noted that certain Democrats seem to be a little less heavy-handed when it comes to the impeachment process now. Well, what has AG, the big question they're asking is, what has AG Barr found? What does the Justice Department have? How many people are on the chopping block here? Are they Republicans? Are they Democrats? Are they independents? Are they sitting members of Congress or the Senate? Or are these people involved in presidential candidacies? Are they presidential candidates? For you see, not only those who perpetrated the crime will be charged, as I've said earlier, but also those who were complicit or even helped in the least little bit can be charged with co-conspiracy. Personally, I think that those who are involved in these crimes that AG Barr has found, and they know who they are acting now like rats from a sinking ship. They're jumping. And maybe this ridiculousness of trying to find a crime that the President of the United States has committed will finally end. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like somebody in Washington, D.C. is trying to clean up the swamp. And you know what? It's starting to look like they're going to use maybe a little common sense.